There's no assembly. What can't you see anything?
Okay, great. So I should be able to see my screen now, and then as well as hear me. Okay, so today's training is based off of manufacturing and assembly. This would be for clients or for companies that are manufacturing items and or assembling items or kits, basically. Such as like a gift bag, for example. You have a gift bag with multiple different components in that gift bag. Okay, to start off, we're going to move up to our manufacturing side. There's two ways we can assemble items, or we can assemble your kit items, is either by going through the manufacturing or by going through the assembly. We're going to start by going through the small process, which is the assembly, and we'll move on to manufacturing. Okay, with the assembly, you're going to have to go to your component or to your finished item. So here we're just going to go to create a new item quickly. For a finished item. And then you'll see on the right-hand side, there's this BOM. This BOM stands for Bill of Materials. And this is where you add in all the components that make up your finished item. So you can come into number, multi-select, and we can add in a few items here and there. Let me just make sure on something quickly. So make sure I have on-hand quantities. And an INB item. Okay. So here's my items that I have quantities for. Well, sorry, these are my components to create my finished item. And then you have this allow, adjust kit components and documents. So this is to allow, so whenever you process an invoice for kit items, you can change the components if need be upon invoicing. Then at the bottom over here, we have a small kit item tick box. This kit item tick box is just means that when you invoice, the components and everything gets put together one time. So which means if I can click on kit item and click on OK, and I can go straight to an invoice. Sorry, customer. Okay, there's our finished item. It's got 2 names. Okay, and then we can click, we can have 1. You can see that we have 0 on hand at the moment. And this will be 100. You can also see the load kit. There's a load kit button on the right-hand side. And this is our components that's used. Then we can click on record. So that little kit item tick box means that this item gets created straight away. So now when we go back into our inventory inquiries and we go to our finished item, you can see that they're still available and on hand and everything is still as 0. It does not go to -1 because the kit item tick box creates everything and puts it together at one time. We can just untick that quickly. You can also see that the items that I used have been decreased by 1 as well. So here's my item. I only have 14 now. I had 70 over here. I only have 69. Okay. Now with that kit item tick unticked at the moment, we can move on to the assembly. So your assembly works as follows. We have our work centers, production schedule, works order, and assembly. Production schedule shows you where all your schedules are at the moment, whether it's in the work center, so whether it's in the works order or assembly. You can also book schedules over here by clicking on the new button and booking an item that needs to be assembled. Okay, to start off, we can go to our work centers and we'll create a quick work center, just where the items are going to be created. And then we're going to go straight to the assembly. The works order is basically a sales order to an invoice. So your works order converts into the assembly. So when we create our works order by loading in our bill of material item, you'll see we only have one. We're going to be making 2 of these, and we'll click on continue. It will then list everything for me as a works order, and I'll click on record. Now I can move on to my assembly. I can then say load production job. Here's my works order, and it automatically brings it for me, just like a sales order would when you convert it to a sales invoice. Other than that, you can create one manually or straight from the assembly. We'll come to load bill of materials, select our item, and click on OK. Then from here, you can click on the record button, and then this would be your item then created. There's our finished item. We created 2 of them. So now when we go to our inventory and services, here's our item with available and on hand as 2. Okay, that would be the assembly. Your assembly does have a work center as well, but that's if you would like to add the work center. It's not really necessary. Okay, so from your bill of materials item, you can then create multiple of that finished product. And then we can move on to the manufacturing. The manufacturing is a little more in-depth when it comes to creating a finished product, and it works separately to the inventory. Okay. We have the processing and the maintenance. We can create machinery, labors, work centers, and the bill of materials itself. Machine and labors isn't really necessarily required. This is if you'd like to use a laborer at a fixed rate. You can then add somebody. Say the person's name is John, and he works at a 600 hourly rate. You can do the same for the machinery. So if you have any machines that you need to record or use on an hourly rate, you can do the same thing for the machines. And then we have our work centers. Our work centers is basically the place where the job is done. So you can click on new, 01, and this is the warehouse. You can then add our laborers or the people that's going to be working under the warehouse and click on OK. Then we have our bill of materials. So this just creates our template for the manufactured item. So if you double click on bill of materials, you can then click on the number. We're going to be creating our finished item. We'll then add in all of our components. Sorry, our work center and the components used. Then from here, we can click on the record button. This just saves it as a template. It doesn't actually create the item. So we click on record and we can close. Then we can go on to starting the job. So after you've created your finished product and all the components that's attached to it, as well as all the work centers that item goes through, you can then move on to processing the job. So you can double click on process job, either select a customer for you, either select the customer that it's for. If not, you can just go as normal, selecting your bill of material that is here. So here you can see our finished item. We can then click on OK and click on generate. You'll see at the bottom that we have our inventory, labor, machinery, and recovery costs. We can then click on our labor. Should be added to our work center. Here. At an hourly rate of 1 hour. Okay. Here's our machinery and if there's any recovery costs. After you've now entered in all the information for your document, you can click on the record button on the top right. It will then show up as open. This means that our job is now open and people are busy with the process. When you finalize the job and you issue out all the work in progress, that's where you issue out everything. So this means that now I'm taking my components out of my stock and I'm giving it to the warehouse so they can manufacture the job. So we can double click on our job that we're processing, auto issue all, because we're going to be using all the items at once. Some jobs might want to use items on a weekly basis. So it depends on the situation. You can then add in like 100 instead of 500 and then do the job continuously until all the items have been issued out. Let me show you an example of that quickly. So we'll set this one to 0. And we can then record. This issue work in progress then takes out our 120 centimeter fluorescent light bulb and takes out our inventory item. You can see that our issued quantity is my issued quantity that I added here. Just check in. So I only issued out the one item. But looks like I issued out everything by mistake. Sorry about that. Okay, so after you've issued out all your materials, you can then move on to close the job. The transfer job is in case you work in multiple different work centers. So from one work center to another work center, you can then change the job and then its components as well, because each work center could have different components. Then we can move on to closing the job. To close the job, you'll click on Close Jobs, click on New. You'll see our job that's still work in progress at the moment. It will show all our revenue and expenses. Currently, our manufactured costing is much lower than our actual items that is used. So we're going to increase this by extra amount. The reason why this won't record, so if I have to leave it as 200 or 210, for example, and I click on record, the job can't be closed if the variance between the manufactured and the work in progress totals are different. This means that you used more money in your components than you did to actually get a product that can be sold at a higher value. So you must make sure that your manufactured value of your finished goods does go over the work in progress amount. Okay, so after created our finished item that is now worth 900, which we spent 819 on, we can click on the record. Sorry about that. Okay. So after we added in our manufactured value, we now have a work in progress, the total value of the items. We can now proceed and look at our inventory, look for our finished item. And now that we have 3 in stock. Okay. Right. So that would be the manufacturing side. You would create your machinery and your labors, create the work centers where your item is placed, the bill of materials, which is the template for all the items that are being created. And then we move on to processing the job, to issuing out all the components, to closing the job. So if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. You can also pop into the chat if there's anything you need. So your fixed breakdown, it works similar to the amount of hours. It's just the breakdown per time. So you have your fixed setup, which is just a total amount that's going to be taken up. And then you have a fixed breakdown, which is a total amount. And if it's broken down from that total amount, it then gets reduced. Core roast. With the agro-processing, the agriculture, it is possible. You can use this. If you are processing canola seed into canola oil, you're more than welcome to use this type of process. It would work just fine. Instead of your finished item, we would just have your canola oil here with all your production and machinery here. Then we can add. Then you'll be able to add in different work centers for the stages of your oil. Okay, so when it comes to the cost of job for quoting, that's more so of a different module. If you'd like to do a job, then it's better to use the workshop module, which is this one over here. This is where you're able to process jobs and quote for clients and what jobs they need that needs to be done, not necessarily manufacturing. So under the manufacturing side, you have your manufacturing reports, which is all your work in progress, production variances, manufacturing variances, work center transfers, job statuses, MRP reports, and so on. Okay, so Gary, with the job quoting, rather be using the workshop module, where you're able to create quotations and do certain jobs for people. Manufacturing is just creating one item at a time. It doesn't change. Okay, great. Is there any other questions that I can answer for you? Okay, great. On the manufacturing side, unfortunately, they can't be disassembled. You do have the option to, if you go to File, there's an option to remove the document, but after the job has been completely processed, then it's a bit difficult. So we can quickly select an item, and we can put a -1. See, it won't allow us. When it comes to the assembly side, under the assembled items, you can load a bill of materials, and then we can disassemble. So when we go to our finished good, we can disassemble that item. But under manufacturing, unfortunately, after you've processed your job and you've closed it, you won't be able to go back. Okay, I don't see any other questions coming in. It's perfectly fine. So if you have any other queries based on the manufacturing or the assembly side, you can do so just by sending support@palladium.co.za an email. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's training on the manufacturing and assembly. Everybody must enjoy the rest of their days and travel home safely. Thank you very much.